This podcast takes you through how to answer question 5 on the impact of war on Britain paper. This is the essay question that carries 16 marks, which is 1/3 of the total marks for the paper. Therefore, it really does require 25 minutes. It's essential that you manage your timing on questions 1 to 4 so that by the time you reach question 5, you've got a good 25 minutes to answer this question. So what does question 5 ask you to do? Well, basically, it gives you a historian's interpretation of the events, followed by a question in which you're asked, how far do you agree? So in this podcast, we're going to use the example of the question from the June 2011 paper, which is this. There's the interpretation. The Second World War significantly changed the opportunities available to women. How far do you agree with this statement? And you're told, use your own knowledge, sources B, E and G, and any other sources you might find helpful to explain your answer. So it's absolutely fundamental you separate those things out. Okay, your own knowledge, in other words, you've got to put precise information into your answer that's not in the sources, and you're told you can use any sources, but in particular you're pointed at 3 sources that you need to use. These are the sources for that particular question. I'm not going to talk through the sources. You can pause this podcast, have a look at those, or if you go to the Impact of War revision page, in the section, the model answer section, you'll actually find this whole answer in there, so you can have a look at the sources and you can have a look at the answer in detail. Okay, so we'll move on. This podcast is focusing really on how to structure your answer. Now, they deliberately place this question last in the paper, so by the time you've worked through questions 1 to 4, you will have done much of the thinking that's required to answer question 5. In other words, it's essential that you answer the questions in the correct order. Absolutely crucial that you do this with the impact of war paper. So as you know, question 1, you're making inferences. Question 2, you're thinking about purpose. For comprehension in question 3, and the reliability in question 4. So by the time you get to question 5, you've already done a lot of the thinking, because those sources that you've answered questions on already, you're going to be incorporating into your answer for question 5. So, structure. Begin your answer with a brief 1 or 2 sentence introduction that explains this is an area in which historians disagree. That's throughout this podcast. In italics, I will give you the actual answer. Okay, so the introduction for this case, something as simple as historians have different interpretations about how significantly the Second World War, 1939 to 45, changed opportunities for British women. Some historians argue the war brought about a significant change for the better, whilst others argue that in many ways the old problems continued in spite of the war. Now, when you do the examination, when you answer question 5, you obviously will have a completely different focus. It'll be a different topic. It won't necessarily be on women. It probably won't be on women. It could be on anything. But those sorts of phrases, historians have different interpretations. Some historians argue that, others argue that. Okay, those phrases, try to put in your introduction when you write your answer to question 5. Those are the key phrases, because you're showing an awareness of the controversy, of the fact that there is disagreement, which is what you're looking at in this question. So once you've done your introduction, the recommended approach is to break the main body of your answer into 2 halves. Okay, and within each half you need to do 2 things. In other words, there are 4 parts to the main body of your answer. Now, there are lots of ways that you can structure answers to question 5. It really is the way in which you prefer. Miss King will have taught you one particular way which works just as well as this way. This is the way that I tend to prefer, but both ways, Miss King's way and my way, will work. The important thing is that you have a clear, sensible structure that links to the mark scheme, which is what this does. Let's have a look at it. So the first half of your answer, okay, should give evidence that supports the interpretation. So whatever the interpretation is, you're going to support it. And what you do in this half of your answer is basically you write 2 paragraphs. You should write one paragraph that uses your own knowledge, and then you should write another paragraph supporting the interpretation using the sources. You then move to the second half of your answer and you do exactly the same. So you write a paragraph that presents a counter interpretation, a different interpretation using your own knowledge, and then you write another paragraph that uses the relevant sources to present another interpretation. So basically you're writing 4 paragraphs in the main body of your essay. How will that look? So first of all, the half of your answer that supports the interpretation. So in this particular question, the interpretation is the Second World War did bring much progress for women. Now have a look at that opening sentence. That's why the opening sentences of paragraphs are so important. From my own knowledge. So you're making it very clear that what this paragraph is doing is you're using your precise own knowledge. From my own knowledge, the Second World War did bring much progress for women. So you're making it very clear. In this paragraph, you are supporting the interpretation, you're agreeing with it, and you're going to use your own knowledge to present a case. Now, I'm not going to read that answer to you. It's quite a long paragraph. You'll see in a moment we're recommending 4 to 5 minutes on this paragraph. You've got 25 minutes in total. In 4 to 5 minutes you should be able to write, get quite a lot of detail in. The bits in bold all the way through is obviously to make the point that your knowledge needs to be precise. Okay, really show the examiner how much precise knowledge you have on that particular topic. The next paragraph is still on the half that supports. You do the same, but you're using the sources. So again, the opening sentence is the key. The sources also support this picture of improved opportunities. So you're continuing with the theme that you were developing in the previous paragraph. You're still arguing a case to support the interpretation, but here you're doing it using the sources. Okay? So you're using all those skills that we've already seen. You're making inferences. You're drawing conclusions from the sources. You're picking the sources that will support the interpretation. Now, don't force a square peg into a round hole on this. If source B doesn't support the interpretation, then just say so. Okay, don't look for evidence in sources unless there is evidence there. Now notice here in the middle, at some point in your answer, try to use those skills you've shown in question 4. So don't effectively be a sucker and just assume that the source is reliable. Show that you've thought about it. So if you're basically using a source to support an interpretation, you want to say, I actually believe that I can trust this source. And so give a reason that it is reliable. Show that you are evaluating the source and that you're thinking about its reliability. So you're bringing those skills into this paragraph as well. You then, at this point you're halfway through your essay, you then move to the other foot. So you're halfway through, you're shifting now to the other half of your answer, and you're going to basically say, on the other hand, there it is, on the other hand, there are other interpretations. There is a different interpretation. So again, look at that opening sentence. On the other hand, the changes were not all for the better, and in many ways there was continuity of the old problems from before the Second World War. So you're presenting a different interpretation here. You're saying, no, actually it wasn't as simple as the fact that World War II brought about progress. World War II, in some ways, didn't bring about progress. Okay, the old problems continued. Now remember, you're doing 2 paragraphs on the counter-argument. So this first one is using own knowledge. So again, there's no reference to sources, you can see there. but again, you can see how precise the own knowledge is. Okay, I put all those words in bold just so you can sort of see that they're really important to get the percentages in, the dates, etc. You've got to show that you've really revised this topic. You've got to bring in that precise own knowledge. Many candidates don't. They think, oh, this is a source paper, and that really weakens your answer. So get that in. So having written that paragraph, you then move into the fourth of the main paragraphs. You're still on the theme that is presenting a counter interpretation, but here you're developing that theme using the sources. Okay, so look at the opening sentence. Nice linking sentence. This continuity of the old problems, which is what you've been talking about in the previous paragraph, is also supported by the sources. So the previous paragraph used own knowledge, now you're using the sources. And again, only use the sources that are relevant. Don't feel you're told to use sources B, E and G, but you don't need to use all three in each paragraph, as long as you use them somewhere across the whole of your answer. And again, in the middle, notice that you're showing that you have evaluated, that you're not just assuming the source is reliable, you've shown that you've thought about issues such as reliability, so you bring that into your answer as well. So there's the point about applying those skills. Finally, conclude your answer by summing up. So the final paragraph will be a summing up. Whether the evidence on the whole supports or challenges the statement. So your answer will therefore consist of 6 paragraphs. Now, timing is crucial, 25 minutes. If you look at the timing, I'm recommending here, spend 4 minutes planning, okay? You can, in the exam, you can write on the sources, that doesn't matter, pick out keywords, and then just quickly jot down a plan. 1 minute for the introduction, the section that supports the interpretation, so paragraphs 1 and 2, saying 5 minutes for the knowledge one, 4 minutes for the source, and then the section, the other half of the answer that challenges the interpretation, that puts forward a different interpretation, again 9 minutes in total. 5 minutes on the knowledge, 4 minutes on the sources, and then a conclusion that's 2 minutes. You add up those numbers, they add up to 25, and that includes the planning time. So again, the timing is crucial on this last question. If you get to write a high quality answer, you really need to be keeping an eye on the clock. That's what the answer will look like. Okay, so you can clearly see there's your introduction. There's paragraph 1 and 2. Paragraphs 1 and 2 support the interpretation. There's paragraphs 3 and 4 which challenge the interpretation, and then a conclusion. That answer, go to Frog, the Impact of War page. You'll see a section on that page which has got the model answers, so you can actually review that model answer, including looking at the sources. So read through that model answer and just get your head around exactly how that works and apply those rules when you write your own answer in the examination next week. Hope that was helpful to you.